Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. And if you would like to be a guest, please contact me there as well, dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. I have a return guest. I'm happy to have Ken Gottfried on. He is an author. He was last on season 2, episodes 108, 122, and 148. Season 3, episodes 98. Season 4, episodes 5 and 64. And also season 5, episode 212. And today we're going to talk about what child psychological abuse really is and what it will do to your kids, how it will affect your kids, and that there's no place to go to have your child assessed and even spend time with your kids because parents are being forced into visitation centers for money. And this is also a form of trafficking as well. We're also going to talk about you, Ken Godfrey. We have a lot to
Thank
go
you.
over.
Thank you for having me here, Marianne. You are a force to be reckoned
Uh,
with 780 podcasts and it's growing. I've got to commend you because it is extremely difficult to be in this genre and
mm,
not just be in this whirlpool where you are sucked in because your
yeah.
care for your kids is it takes precedence over just about anything. And when you're watching them being abused in front of your face and
Mm.
you're still in this years later, whew, you are a pillar in our community, and I thank you for everything you've done.
Well, thank you so much for your kind words. And parents think, parents are told, well, just walk out of family court. Just, you don't have to go back in there. Oh, yes, yes. Once you get sucked in there, especially when the child support becomes involved, you have to fight for your life.
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. Um, there's a few things that you can do to get out of it that
Hmm.
I'm finding out that, I think was it Montana or Wisconsin? Their Supreme Court basically said that child support is illegal. And you could
Okay.
actually send letters and certified letters to uh, have it nullified because these people are, that they're so far out of the scope of what they should be doing
Hmm.
is it's insane. It's absolutely insane. Like, I mean, just to give you, for instance, my attorney, Andrea Capua, who represented me during my divorce, is now representing the county of Watauga County and she has refused to, I mean, she's literally acting as their attorney, knowing that she was in my case and my attorney in my case, and has refused to like recuse herself. Hey, this is a conflict of interest. Things like this go on all the time. They don't care about conflict of interest. They don't care
No.
about any of this stuff. And I don't want to really get into that until we really start talking about this child abuse, what it does to your kids, what it does to your family, and what I believe people should do to get the hell out of this and to save their kids,
Right.
because that is the most important thing. And, a parent, I mean, these people who are involved in this are not only child abusers, but they're murderers.
Hmm.
Because I have seen 350 people just in the last 9 years off themselves.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you can't what do you do? I mean, that's the reason I'm in this in the
Hmm.
first place, is because I cannot watch another parent in their head. I
Hmm.
cannot watch another parent, oh, this guy was fighting and fighting and fighting and finally gave up. And not only that, but I'm hearing more and more women doing the same thing. And
Hmm.
you know we know how violent this is to the psyche of someone who is being emotionally, domestically abused. And just to let you know, this is the definition from the Department of Justice Emotional domestic violence is harming one's relationship with his or her children. And that's exactly what these judges are ordering. That is exactly
Uh-huh.
what the police are refusing to write reports on. That is exactly, and so, it's sad. I mean, this should not be a factor. In all 50 states, it is mandatory to report child abuse,
Hmm.
period. There's no two ways about it. But yet, the sheriff's department, police department, the judges in court, if you bring it up, say, hi, I believe my kid is being psychologically abused,
Hmm.
they don't care. And they won't initiate a child abuse report and mandatory investigation from the Child Protective Services. And Child Protective Services refuse to investigate psychological abuse because they use the same excuses. Oh, it's too difficult, it's too hard.
Well, get this, Ken. Well, you probably know my case, but that's what they came after me for, emotional child abuse. And after my case and after my federal lawsuit, suddenly the department here in Pennsylvania, someone was telling me that they don't investigate emotional child abuse anymore on a
You
parent.
know, that's because they're like, supposedly right now, I can't say supposedly, Dr. Craig Childress has a evaluation and an assessment to do for your child. But
Right.
the assessment needs to be done by somebody who is certified in family structures and understands the family structure and what it does to children. And you cannot give this to the hands of these child abusers in the Child Protective Services because they're going to corrupt it. They're going to put their people in charge, and they're going to do false assessments. They've already proven that they don't care. Their thing is all about the $77 billion that comes into their states, their
Right.
portion, their meat. And I've already spoke to. I've got a list of like all the people who I've spoken to, from the APA to the Sheriff's Department to the Judicial Standards Commission to even the governor. I wrote him a letter about a month and a half ago and said, hey, what are you going to do about this type of abuse? Of course, I got no response. And so what they're leaving, and I didn't write this book. You can see the book behind me. I didn't write Killing Judges. And by the way, you want to get Killing Judges too. It's a good book.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't write the book because, willy-nilly of this. I wrote the book because they're intentionally abusing children for the profits, and they have no regard to children or parents in any of this instance. They will, I mean, come on, can you imagine? I'm not going to write a child abuse report, and there's no one you can call in hierarchy. There's no one to report that deputy, that sheriff, that police officer for refusing to write that report. And none of them have the qualifications not to write the report. It's a sick system.
It
And
is.
that's why the only thing left is, for a parent to protect their kid. And I've asked this from Andrea Capua. I was like, what is the system? What is the procedure when a report is put in for emotional child abuse or psychological child abuse? What is the procedure? Like sexual assault, like physical assault, they have a procedure.
Hmm.
What is the procedure that they go through to investigate and assess the child? And I'd love to say I got a great document from Andrea Capua, but you know, I don't want to curse on your show,
Oh, spell
but
it out. That's what I always did when my kids were
I
little.
literally got, oh, we put this in as a FOIA request, and I'll have you the information in whenever. Well, how long is this going to take? Well, it's been about 6 months.
Ugh.
And she's refused to respond to me, refused to whatever, anything. And where does that leave anybody? My kid is being abused to the
Mhm.
point where there's 90% chance if it's severe, I will never see that child again. My
Mm.
child, I will never see my child again.
Same here.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and if you do see them, there is just such a plethora of emotional abuse that's happened to them, and they're going to wind up with cognitive dissonance because of all the lies that they've been told. They're going to have trouble regulating because they've grown through critical thinking, which, they've not had critical thinking skills up until you're 25, which is the time that
Mm.
you're developing those because they have so much fear and hate that's registered in them. And most of the time they're enmeshed with that other parent and they've been split to realize there's only black and white. One parent's only good, one parent's only bad. So you're in a situation of no win because you're a
Mm.
liar, you're a you're a troublemaker, you're feared, and you should be ostracized and treated like shit.
Oh,
And that's
okay.
and where is the compassion? Where is the love which was
No,
beaten out of them? And it's sad. It's
they ha
really sad.
they have no empathy whatsoever. It's frightening.
It is. And that this is how murderers are created.
Hmm.
Is that you leave a kid to kill animals and he or she starts killing animals and they find it intriguing and fun and um they're not the word enticed, but they're um when a parent is like, help me out here, gives them praise for doing this. What's
Oh
the
yes, a pat on the head for
Yeah, for killing
calling
a
it.
killing a cat or a frog
Yes.
or a dog. And so they're like, "Ooh, this is what I should do." And that's what parents do to their kids. The more mean that they are to that parent, the more they get praise and
Right.
love and stuff like that. It's all conditional.
Right. And
So a
then the
child,
parent, yeah, the parent runs out and buys him a car. That's even better.
oh, absolutely. Oh, you were mean to mom or mean to dad. Let's go ahead and take you out to a concert. Let's
Yep.
buy you some clothes. Let's,
Yep.
that you are being awesome now. Yet if they go back and they're like, I spoke to dad or mom and you know what? They want to take me out for lunch.
Mm.
Oh, you will get, I love Dr. Edward Tronick. He did the still face experiment. If you want to make a child follow you, listen to you. You do that still face experiment, you withdraw love, and you make them as uncomfortable as you possibly can get. And you can manipulate that child any way you want.
Mm.
Because by making them uncomfortable, they will do anything to get out of their situation.
Mm.
And so here's our, what do to try and get that child back? They've literally been brainwashed
Hmm.
to to be non-empathetic to that parent. Oh, that parent deserves everything that they get because they don't even have a place to live in my world. So anyhow, so that's what happens to the child. And
Right.
the child is just in this manipulative, parental coercive situation where they don't have a choice unless they want to feel like they're not being loved and they don't want to miss and they don't want to do anything against the abuser who's that parent who's doing this because they've already treated the other parent like crap. So therefore, if they alienate this parent or they say anything bad against this parent, they know the same thing's going to happen to them. And especially if they have other kids, oh, it's going to pile on. Let's just pile on dad or pile on mom, and they're
Right.
going to feel so uncomfortable.
Because they don't have the guts to stand up to that other parent and say, "Hey, I'm going to talk to my mom or dad. We're going to meet for lunch." They just don't
It's
have the
it's
guts.
not it's not the guts. You got to realize it's making them so uncomfortable because they've seen the little nuances. And so they know that they are going to get destroyed if they say, I'm going to dad's place anyhow. I'm going over here. It takes such a willpower.
Hmm.
I mean, you've seen Maddie from, she does her own, uh,
uh,
She does her own podcast, and
Alienation Project.
yeah, and she's wonderful, but you see the trauma that she's gone through and the pain that she's had to deal with, and knowing that her mom is only trying to manipulate her and get her back into the fold.
Mhm.
And so she's had to distance herself from her. No one should have to do that.
Right.
But if you are dealing with an abuser, the same way you deal with a predator, like if you have a stepdad or a dad who's sexually abusing you, you don't want to tell that child you need to be friendly with that parent because they're mentally unstable.
Hmm.
Okay? That's the same thing with this.
Hmm.
And we are fighting, in this fight, we're literally fighting everyone at the APA, the American Psychological Association.
Hmm.
We're fighting everybody in the parental alienation study group. We are fighting almost everybody who's a clinical psychologist and psychologist. I was fighting people at Appalachian State University, North Carolina State, NC State, and you get nowhere. When you bring in psychological abuse and things like that, they basically turn you off. They don't respond after a while, and you're like, "Listen, my child is being abused. We don't want to hear it, and we don't want to respond." It's like Josh Stein, the governor of North Carolina. Hey, this is happening. I am getting call after call. It's not just me.
Hmm.
I have had 20 calls just from our district, from Watauga County, about the same child abusers, the same judges who are ordering child abuse, the same sheriff, Len Hageman, who's refusing to write police reports, and the police station saying it's not in our district. You have all these people literally saying it is okay for your child to be abused. It is okay for you to be domestically abused because we will not do our job and we will protect just our people, just our departments, just our judges. And it's sad. That's why I wrote these books. You
Hmm.
can't keep abusing kids and abusing parents because it's gonna, yay. Oh, by the way, okay, this is important. I'm gonna pull this up so I have it and I could say something.
Has been in my book, Raised by These Wolves, Volume 2, and he came as Chapter 1. And I encourage everyone to read his books. Here he is. There you are.
Yay, what a
Yeah,
good looking guy that is.
definitely.
Okay, if you go to Child Abusive Judges,
Hmm.
that is my website, childabusivejudges.com. We have 1,100 judges accused of child abuse. We have the judges in my case who are actual child abusers, and they are child abusers not because I say they're child abusers. They are child abusers because I have a letter from the North Carolina Professional Licensed Counselors Association that says these people are child abusers because the therapist who was seeing my daughter had 3 ethics violations, was seeing my daughters for a year and a half, and abused my kids, and was okayed to be an expert witness in my trial by Judge F. Warren Hughes, who
Hmm.
said it's okay to let some person who's abusing your kids that you don't even know to be an expert witness. And the judge after her, Judge Hal Harrison, said it's perfectly fine to abuse your kids. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the the power of the courts to prosecute you and persecute you and do retribution against you and revenge against you because you're seeing this as it's happening.
Hmm.
So what we're going to do is we're going to make an example out of you and we are going to destroy you psychologically.
Hmm.
And that's what they did. But okay. So if you go to childabusivejudges.com, there is a section called States and Letters.
Hmm.
Everybody should know this. If you are going through this, you need to know this. By the way, you can also report a judge on this page, and I will put them every 3 months or so. I go back in and I list all the other judges. You can see if your judge is already listed on there,
Hmm.
which most likely they are.
Hmm.
But in the section right next to home, states and letters, you can actually create a letter on that page. So on the first page, you write the child's full name, all recipients, name and agency representatives, your state, expected response time, and your full name. You can generate the letter there, or you can download a sample letter that I already have.
Hmm.
The sample letter has, it has spaces for you to put everything in. It has a North Carolina code for child abuse, and you could change that out. Underneath that is the signs of psychological abuse that may indicate harmful environment and manipulative influences on your child. Underneath that is all 50 states statutes for child abuse and the extracted definition for serious mental harm, because in all 50 states there is a statute for child psychological abuse or child abuse.
Hmm.
In that statute, there's a definition for mental injury, psychological harm, emotional harm, willful emotional injury. Those things are all listed there. So go to childabusivejudges.com and click on that, download the letter, change the letter for your state, your area, and send it certified to the police station, certified to the sheriff's department. Ask them when you're going to get a copy of the report.
Hmm.
Now, if you are doing this alone, or if you have an attorney, you should ask your attorney to write, here's the letter, change this for our state, and have him send it in certified, and make sure that you have he will do this, and follow up with him, because so many attorneys are corrupt that don't want to do this because they know that they have to stand in front of that judge for the next 5 years.
Hmm.
So they don't want to rock the boat. Their money depends on standing in front of that judge and being able to win a case now and again.
Hmm.
So, but this is vitally important. And if he or she says, your attorney, hey, I'm not going to do this, you have the wrong attorney, and you should write that letter yourself, send it certified mail, return receipt, and ask when will I, what day will I expect this report, and please let me know when it is. And therefore, you have documented evidence. And you could also send it via email. Send an email and make sure it's documented. And with that, you can actually go ahead and, and you can sue that police department or that sheriff's department for failure to do their job and protect your kids. And I'd also recommend that you send it to your child protection agency in your county.
Hmm.
I mean,
Oh,
it's vital that you do this. Now, the most important thing that I would love to get across, and I've tried to do this for years and years and years, and
video of the sheriff's department saying, no, we're not going to help you with this at all.
absolutely, and they should go right over to the police department, and they'll be like, "This is not our jurisdiction. We will not do this." They should call up and say, "Listen," they call up their attorney general. By the way, 100% of the attorney general's office and his pay
Hmm.
is funded through Title IV D&E. That's why they're not doing anything. Okay. So they know they're going to lose their retirement, lose their pay, lose their, payment for their offices, everything. So say go, if you can go to the attorney general, videotape that. But you can usually call or document it or send in a complaint or whatever, how you
Oh, an
contact.
affidavit. Do an affidavit.
Yes, and you can literally say this judge is not reporting child abuse, psychological child abuse.
Hmm.
This, which causes, and mention your state's number. So let's say, what state are you in?
Pennsylvania.
Pencil. Oh my God, LMNOP,
P.
Pennsylvania. And let's go over here, Pennsylvania. Your statute is Title 23, 6311. And where it comes in is Pennsylvania 23, PA, CSA 6303, B.11, mental injury or impairment, which is psychological abuse,
Hmm.
destroying a kid, splitting their psychology or psyche or psych, whatever.
Yeah, there, yeah.
Okay. Now, just to let you know, when you split a child,
Hmm.
that is the beginning of borderline personality
Oh,
disorder.
yeah, it's terrible.
And if you go to anybody, any of the therapists that are out there, they will tell you the worst cases of them trying to help somebody is when somebody has borderline personality disorder. Because if you mention to them, oh, I think this is you, they will cut you off and find another therapist.
Right.
Okay. So they know that if a person has borderline personality disorder, they're like a no-win situation. And so that's what this leads into. And
Yeah.
that's why I've been doing what I'm doing, because I know it's in my children. They
Hmm.
are, I love them to death, but I can tell you right now, I feel bad for anybody. I feel bad for anybody having to deal with that and the unrealized trauma that they're going through. See, one of the worst things, and Dr. Childress hit this perfectly, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is having, there's breach and repair.
Hmm.
Have you heard about breach and repair?
Mm-mm.
Breach and repair is like, Marianne, I can't believe you're doing this. But then 5 seconds later or 5 minutes later, Marianne, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be a dick. Let's repair our relationship. Da,
Oh.
da, 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 da. That's what happens with a child and a parent. Happens
Mhm.
all the time. Put your galoshes on. It's raining outside. I don't want to wear them. Put your galoshes on. It's raining outside. We have to go. I don't want to go outside. 5 minutes later, they're going outside. Okay, I'm sorry, mom. I didn't mean to be a little kid. Da da da. That's breach and repair. Then you have breach and slight. I can't remember the second one, but it's almost a repair, but it's still okay.
Mhm.
And so you repair. You may think both differently. Mom, I don't want to wear that shirt. I want to wear this one. It could be anything. And then there's breach and non-repair. That's the
Mhm.
ugly side of psychology. That's where you let things fester and they make mountains out of molehills.
Oh, yeah.
A simple argument will be like, he abused me, she abused me. She, trying to be a parent that, trying to explain whatever it is. I took your phone because you are playing on it too long. Oh, stop abusing me from taking my phone. Okay. And that doesn't get repaired. And
Mm-mm.
so it festers. Mom is such a evil, whatever. Oh, this child is horrible. They're never listening. That is the ugliness. And they don't try to say, listen, I'm sorry. They don't show empathy. They don't go back in and try and repair this. They just let this fester into such a mountain that they're now afraid to. They've now done so much stuff to denigrate and hate this person, hate this parent. That's where it all comes in. And the one parent who's doing this, or judge who's doing this, or
Mhm.
sheriff's department who is doing this, is literally destroying that child
Mhm.
because they're not letting that breach get repaired. And it doesn't have to be repaired perfectly. I can disagree with my child. My child can disagree with me. I may be right. They may be right. Who cares? But at least you're communicating and saying, okay, we agree to disagree, but you know what? I see it this way because I'm an old fuddy duddy, and you see it this way because you know better than everybody else because you're a teenager.
Mhm. Right.
So, that's fine, but at least you're communicating.
Mhm.
And so, it's, uh, what's horrible in this whole situation is that I've you understand, and the people listening to this podcast can understand. I know I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. but I know a whole lot about this stuff because I dove headfirst into the deep end 9 years ago, 10 years ago, because
Well,
I needed to know what was happening to my children.
right. And you explained to me what the shared persecutory delusion was, because we had talked about it and it wasn't sinking in, but then we talked about it more and it's like, oh God, this is what I'm dealing with.
Exactly, because you're dealing with a parent who is basically contrived in their delusional mind
Hmm.
that you're evil. You caused me so much pain. I should fear you because I don't know what you're going to do next. And that with that parent's coercive abilities convinces that child, oh, he's always been this way or she's always been this way, and you need to fear them and hate them. And they won't say fear and hate, but yeah, they've always tried to hurt you and destroy you. And I've always tried to protect you, this, that, the other. This is this is how they coerce that child and convince that child that they are, you know, that they should. And this is the right thing to do is to hate and fear that parent. That's only some of the things. And you were saying about what did you bring up?
Bill Burnett's five-factor model.
Oh, geez.
Okay.
I love Bill. I love Amy Baker. I love all these people, but okay, I'm going to say this on here. The Parental Alienation Study Group has allowed their project to they've allowed that to blur their lines between what they're supposed to do ethically and to protect children. And by doing this, they've actually engaged in child abuse and murder. And you're going to sit back and be like, here's the dichotomy of all of these people.
Hmm.
Bill Burnett, I love them. Linda Gottlieb, Amy Baker, all these people. They are absolutely right about trying to push their agenda for parental alienation. And I'm gonna give this a definition of why.
Hmm.
But what they've done is Dr. Craig Childress has two absolute, undeniable DSM-5, V995.51,
Hmm.
shared persecutory delusion, and a false factitious belief imposed upon another. Those two things are absolutely part of they are in stone, they are in the DSM, and they should be that child should be assessed and they should be recognized. The Parental Alienation Study Group refuses to recognize these two things. These are child abuse. They don't want to see them because Dr. Craig Childress wrote a book called Foundations. And
Hmm.
by the way, if you ever read that book, it is literally from start to finish. Oh, this is the story of my life. This is what I'm dealing with. This is why nothing's getting, going, why my children are not getting help. I mean, it literally was word for word. He may have sat right next to me and wrote this entire book. It is a brilliant book, Foundations by Craig Childress. What he says in there is the people of PAS and the parental alienation are wrong. They never did their investigation and their about what this thing actually is. If they did it, they would have come back with shared persecutory delusion and a false factitious belief imposed upon another. Those are definite what's going on within this group. And I believe these parental alienation people are actually on the right track because I think there's more to this, but the main two things are the shared persecutory delusion and a false factitious belief. And you have to, those are child abuse. You have to assess the child for these. He has the assessment for them. But these PAS people refuse to follow their ethics and actually report this. And there's probably 30, 50 psychologists in this genre who are on the PASG who refuse to actually write the APA and all these people and call them out for this child abuse. They don't have to be, have their parental alienation stuff,
Mhm.
but they should know about family structures, and what's happening with these kids are these two things, and we need to add other things to say parental alienation, but
Mhm.
that is not ready now. They are not ready to do this, so their five-factor model means bullshit because they're trying to prove parental alienation and then prove that's child abuse. No, that's not the way you do anything.
Mhm.
You go in and you start writing reports about the APA not protecting kids because of this, that the APA is murdering parents because of this, because they know how horrible this is for a parent. And
Mhm.
so these people are not writing reports. They are not doing what they should be doing. They're not doing what the ethics tells them to do. They need to write reports for the shared persecutory delusion and the false factitious belief imposed upon another, because that is their job and they should know this if they're in family structures. And that's why I get so upset with Bill Burnett, with these people, because I've already mentioned this to them. I
Mhm.
put that out to them. I said, guys, I get you don't like Dr. Craig Childress. I get he's a horrible old fuddy duddy. I get that he's done stuff wrong in the past. I get all that shit.
Mhm.
Okay. But you guys have to protect children. And this is absolutely accurate. And you need to write reports against every president and every person who's dealing with this.
Mhm.
And who's saying, I'm not going to talk about this. I'm not going to do anything. Now, just to let you know, these are the presidents of the APA, the American Psychological Association. I've contacted every single one of them since Antonio Puente from 2017.
Mhm.
And so I spoke to Antonio Puente, Dr. Jessica Henderson Daniel, Rosie Phillips Davis, Sandra Schulman, Jennifer F. Kelly, Frank Worrell, Thelma Bryant, Cynthia De Las Fuentes, and Deborah M. Quara. I have either spoke to them or emailed them, each one of them telling them this is going on.
Mhm.
And to my disbelief, none of them would contact me back, with the exception of Jessica Henderson Daniel, who lied to me for 6 months, saying, I'll respond to this. I'll respond to this. She wrote a letter in 2018 that went to the President of the United States. At that time, it was Donald Trump, saying how horrible it was that the border patrol was separating children and parents at the border, and they need to stop. It is so disgusting that you're doing this. Dot 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 dot. So I wrote her a letter that said, if you're saying that, what? And there was only 2,000 kids at the border that were separated from their parents, but yet we have 1 million kids separated a year in family courts, and you're
Mhm.
not writing a letter to say, hey, this is really damaging. You need to make sure that they're not being psychologically abused as well, and you're not doing it. She refused to respond, and their board of directors, I'm going to say something. I am really shocked that somebody hasn't done something horrible to this organization for them refusing to address this type of child abuse, knowing how rampant it is, knowing how many calls they get. And I want to tell everybody in this population who's listening to this, if you have the opportunity, find the American Psychological Association online and leave them a review. Leave them a review. Let them know how many people that are and how many children they are abusing by not addressing this. Dr. Kim Mills, she does the podcast for the APA, has refused to have Dr. Craig Childress on, has refused to talk about psychological child abuse, has actively, willingly encourage people not to talk about it and not to have anybody on her podcast. And by her doing that, has literally killed parents and killed children
Mhm.
because she knows that this is very, very dangerous and very, very harmful to the parents and the kids. And for her not to have somebody on her podcast like Dr. Craig Childress shouting from the rooftops, this is child abuse.
Mhm.
We need to have an assessment. You can't keep ripping parents and children apart in family court. I don't care how much you're making, how
Mm.
much the judges are making. You stop doing this, you get involved in this, and you stop the abuse from happening. They are absolutely firmly believe, yes, emotional psychological child abuse is great for a kid, is perfect for a kid. It's okay to destroy them. It's okay to just screw them up for the rest of their lives. It is okay to fracture a family because the American Psychological Association doesn't care about kids or families. Go ahead. You want to say something? I know.
No, uh, so the system is the problem. You've got the judges. The judges don't need any more training. I'm so sick and tired of hearing parents say, oh, the judges need. No, we don't need to dump any more taxpayers into these child abusers wearing black robes or Halloween costumes.
Yep.
So the problem, eh, some people say, well, don't blame your ex, blame the judge making these crazy decisions. Uh, it, but still, they're not they're not doing their jobs of dealing with the personality disorders and the future personality disorders that this child psychological abuse is going to cause. So this is how they're going to keep their hamster wheel going. So they're going to, churn out these family court cases and destroy these kids. And they don't care because they know they're going to be coming back once they get married and divorced, and the wheel's going to keep turning.
Absolutely. And, I will tell you a couple of mistakes that I've made in my case. Um, the day after December, I'm going to tell you the date, December 2nd, 2015. Um, I went to court to try and see my daughters for Christmas, and it's been a year of fighting, 2 years of fighting for trying to get parental rights. And the judge finally said, now, hold on, let's back up. In February, that's when he was like, okay, this counselor who didn't involve you in your own kids gave 4 months for them to be okay to see me. It's now been 11 months. And he said, I want to see your kids in private chambers. He gets both of my kids in private chambers and listens to them saying, I don't give a shit if my dad was dead. I could care less about him. I wish he had never been born. I don't even want to know him. That's what they said in private chambers. Did the judge say, hey, we have a serious issue here because I was told 11 months ago that these kids are going to be fine to see their dad. Instead, here's 11 months later, they don't care if their dad is dead. Um, does he say, ooh, we have serious psychological abuse. We need to report this and
Mhm.
separate them from their mom or do whatever they can? No, he
No.
doubles down and says, dad's never going to see these kids again until they hit 18. Um, at which time on December 3rd, I was out in front of the courthouse with Judge F. Warren Hughes abused my daughters.
Hmm.
And so what I screwed up, and not to be rude, this is back in 2015. You couldn't take a video on your phone for very long. You couldn't do any of that stuff. We weren't doing that heavily at that point.
Right.
Um, what I really wish I did is videotape that, called 911 when I was out there, and videotaped the police or sheriff's department when I tried to file child abuse charges against that judge,
Hmm.
and then posted that on Facebook. And while I had all the signs, and have them say, no, we're not going to make this report. So I have that there. And I was called into the next judge, and which was Judge Hal G. Harrison, and he did everything to give me a gag order and said, if you do this again, I'm going to put you directly in jail. What I screwed up is I should have made a banner that said Judge Hal Harrison is a child abuser as well and protects other child abusers. Because I knew that my daughters were seriously, seriously abused at that
Right.
point.
Right.
And so this way it had to be escalated and escalated because I needed to escalate this as far as I should have. And because it was the only chance I had to try and protect my kids
Mhm.
from this horrendous abuse. And there was nothing I could do. And I should have called 911 that day, 911 the next day, kept on doing it, and actually responding now. When I text them, why are they not calling me back? Why am I leaving voicemails when they should be answering? What the heck is going on? And you're trying to answer all this stuff. And if you're lucky, you get on Facebook and find out what the hell's going on. You find a father's movement, a mother's movement, whatever it is. Oh, this is, they lead people down the primrose path
Mhm.
of, oh, this is parental alienation. No, it is not parental alienation. This is child psychological abuse. And they need to call it that. By the way, if anybody out there goes into court and says, excuse me, I believe my child and this is parental alienation, you should slap yourself in the face.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you should leave that courtroom immediately because you're actually harming your kids further. You go
Right.
in there and you say, Your Honor, I believe you steal my letter. Write your own letter, whatever you want to do that is on my page, childabusivejudges.com. You steal that letter. Here's the statute, Your Honor. I believe my child is being psychologically abused. They absolutely need to be assessed.
So then what do you do if you're standing there and the opposing attorney says you're crazy and he or she is alienating the child from the whoever?
Oh, Your Honor, I would also like to file charges against this attorney for child psychological abuse. They're making up lies. They're actively trying to abuse my children, and I'd like them arrested immediately.
I wish I would have known
Also,
that.
I know we all wish we would have known what the hell to do. That's why this is like a step by step. You do this in court, you file charges, and you try and file charges against that other attorney that's preventing you from seeing your kids, that's actively involved in the abuse of your kids. And you
Mhm.
go to the sheriff's department and police departments. Oh, by the way, videotape, always videotape, this stuff and make sure you have it on record. Record any interaction with anybody, with the judges, with the police department, with the sheriff's department, with DHHS or the Division of Child Services. You video record them saying, we don't want to do anything.
Mhm.
Because I have on my page on states and letters every single state's code for child abuse. And therefore, if you have an attorney that is worth a shit, that really cares about you and your kids, they will immediately file uh, child abuse charges against that DHHS, that Child Protective Agency person.
Yeah.
They will immediately file charges against that sheriff for failing to write reports. They will immediately file all these things, and they know they're going to get in a world of shit, but they're protecting, and they should be protecting you and your children. There's no reason they won't do it other than they're being fed by the state bar, and they know if they do this, state bar is going to come after them. But
Oh,
they have to, how do you have to protect these, you have to protect these people. You have to protect the parents because the
right.
parents they're out in the world not knowing what to do. We're all sitting there not knowing what to do. Finally, when we get, oh my God, this is child abuse.
Yeah, I think that's, you're right. That's what has to happen. We have to, I mean, we can say, like, I'm an alienated parent, but we have to put the child abuse, which caused us to be alienated, correct? No?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the key thing. You have to point out the DSM-5 V995.51. This is child abuse. You are neglecting your job by not writing reports.
Mhm.
Because if we can get the sheriff's department, and see, this is Ugh. You want to stop this parental alienation, this child abuse? Have the sheriff's department or police department start writing reports. We have 10, 20 reports of psychological child abuse against this judge
Mhm.
because the judge now knows that, you've told this in open court. This is child psychological abuse. And the judge has refused to do anything. He has broken his canons for
Mhm.
protecting children, protecting parents for by not reporting child abuse.
Right.
And this is why I wrote my book, Child,
Mhm.
because because these judges are willfully neglecting their canons of office. Now you got to remember, every judge out there was a scumbag lawyer.
Mhm.
And what do we think of lawyers? They're liars. I've heard you a million times. It's not lawyer, it's liar. These guys are the scumbags. These women are, these lawyers are the scumbags. I always say guys, but I bulk that both men and women. These are the scumbags who do not mind abusing kids. And
Mhm.
therefore, you filed charges against them and against their law firms. You actually sue them and their law firms. You get copies of the transcripts, the voice recordings, of the transcripts. Here it is at 13 minutes and whatever. And this lawyer is objecting to me seeing my child.
Well,
Now, I will say this. I want to take
okay.
1 minute to say this because you know this and I know this. 85% of the people that we speak to, 80% of them are right on point. 15 to 20% of them are not.
Yeah.
They have issues.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And what you don't throw everybody into the fire because there's 15 to 20% that have issues. You don't throw those children into the fire because
Mhm.
and not care about them because you have 15% of the population of that's coming to you that may be off kilter.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, but that does happen.
Right. And
And so that's 15% of the people that come to us,
uh-huh.
that come to the police station, that come to the sheriff's office, that sit in family court. There's a bit that are not batting 1,000. Now, they're out of the 80 to 85% of the other people. Yes, many of them are going through complex PTSD, without a doubt.
Mhm.
And they may seem a little bit discombobulated, but their focus is on the welfare of their children, their
Mhm.
relationship of their children. And yeah, they may not have seen their children in 6 months, 8 months, and they're no longer getting calls, and they're kind of going a little out of their mind. There's a difference between those people
Uh-huh.
and the ones who are like, yeah, I can drink and drive. I can do
Yeah.
cocaine and it doesn't bother me.
Right. Right.
No, no. Just because I, smack around the kid a little bit doesn't mean nothing. Those people, yeah, okay, that disconnect versus the parent who's just been fighting for 6 months, a year, 3 years, and they're losing it because they lost their connection with their kids because their child has already been split.
So then, okay, this was what I was going to ask you. And I won't keep you all morning because I can talk to you all day. But so when the judge took my boys in to be sequestered with the attorneys and, the court transcriptionist, and they told him what they wanted. They wanted 50-50, like we had been for 10 years. So there was a red flag that judge should have noticed right from the very beginning. We had been co-parenting for 10 years with no problems. The kids were going 5 days on, 5 days off. There was no problems until what? Suddenly, someone's calling somebody crazy and alienating the kids. But he was playing along. So this was all a game. So when my attorney came out of that room, she ran over to me and she said, "The judge is twisting your son's words." So then I should have filed a lawsuit against Judge Robert Sambrook for child psychologically abusing my kids and the opposing attorney, correct?
I wouldn't know. See, okay, filing lawsuits are different than filing criminal charges.
Okay.
And so you have to go after the criminal charges because if this judge is manipulating and twisting words of your child, that judge needs to be as brought off the bench and
Mhm.
taken off the bench by the judicial
Board of Ethics or whatever it's called.
yeah, the judicial standards committee in your state. But the hardest thing is that the judicial standards commission in your state is so corrupt. 99% of every complaint they get is thrown out with a form letter.
Right.
So judges who are in the Judicial Standards Commission are scumbag lawyers who became heads of the Judicial Commission who are just protecting judges.
Hmm.
Whether this judge, I mean, you see how hard it is to get complaints against the judge. You see how hard it is to actually have anything move. You know, this is why I brought this book, to fruition, is because let me ask you, I've asked this question to so many police, so many deputies. These guys were all friends of mine, so many of them who I thought were friends of mine.
Uh-huh.
If your child was being abused, and they usually brought it up by themselves. If my child, and you've gone to all of these people, including DHHS and the Division of Child Protective Services, and they say, we don't care. And the governor, like Josh Stein, we don't care. It's okay to abuse your child if you're in a if you're in a divorce. It
Mhm.
is okay to abuse a child if you're in family court, especially if it's psychological abuse, which is the worst type of psychological abuse, according to Joe Spinazzola in his reports, Edward and his articles, Edward Crook and
Mhm.
his articles. All these major players who understand that psychological abuse is the worst form of abuse, at least as bad as sexual abuse,
Mhm. Mhm.
and they're not doing anything to protect them. Who do you use? Let's just say Lucas Smith. He's in the Watauga County Sheriff's Department. He's the guy. He's a child abuser directly under Len Hageman, and he is saying we are not going to write child abuse reports. And you call up. This is not only good to bring with you; it is also good to call 911. Hi, I'd like to report Deputy Lucas Smith for refusing to write a child abuse report. And I would like him found guilty, or brought up on charges for misdemeanor. In North Carolina, it's a misdemeanor for not reporting child abuse.
Mhm.
In Florida, it's a felony. In
Mhm.
every other state, you should also look that up because you may need 911 and you have a record when you call 911.
Mhm.
And then you can actually call after that the sheriff's department. Now, here's one of the best things. Don't do this alone. Bring in family members, bring in anybody who knows you, bring in friends, bring in other parents, moms, dads, this is happening to. All record it, go Facebook Live on some, record on the others, post it all about, have some of them call 911. Hey, we've got this deputy refusing to write 5 child abuse reports. We want 5 counts of a misdemeanor against this person.
Mhm.
And see what they, and have that on record. And what's going to happen is there's nothing we can do. Sorry about that. At that point, how long are you going to go to watch this happen to your child
Mhm.
before you step into the genre of I have to protect my child? Now, let me switch back. 3 weeks ago, my daughter got married.
Mhm.
I was totally out of it. Never, all this stuff, didn't hear anything. You're going to miss milestone after milestone after milestone with your children. How long are you going to let this happen? Because once they split, their psyche is horrible to get back. And the longer it goes on, the more damage is happening. So you have to try and end this immediately. Now, the worst part about this is any deputy, any police, okay, psychological abuse, here's your account, and I send it over to the DHHS, Division of Child Services.
Mhm.
Now they're going to handle it. Go to the Division of Child Services. We got this. We are going to get your child assessed by this person who is not in our department, who is a family structure person certified, and they're going to do the Dr. Childress assessment of these children,
Mhm.
of your child. That's it. That's all they have to do.
Mhm. It's
They
too easy.
won't do this because they're protecting themselves and the judges because they know how many people would report child abuse.
Hmm.
Thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands.
Hmm.
Okay. We need that they start writing reports. Directors in Watauga County, Tom Hughes, Chad Slagle, these people there are criminals and child abusers and should not be in their position. Um, these people refuse to do an assessment of my child, which is really simple. They refuse to actually write reports, and they covered for the judge who is ordering child abuse. I would much rather say that after using my Second Amendment right than than watching my kids be destroyed and being and missing 12 years of time with them.
Mm.
From their learning how to drive, their college experiences, their first day at college, their graduation at college, their weddings, their children, all that shit.
Hmm.
How do you deal with that? This was my life. These were my kids. These were the reason I lived. System, which is corrupt, which 88% of all judges are retirement is funded from this abuse. So you can't, it's a no-win situation. That's why you have to have as many people go into the deputy's office and file this stuff and put it online and show the people that they are abusing kids and abusing parents.
Hmm.
Now, I'm going to do this because I printed this out. And these are just the people in my case who I've contacted.
Hmm.
Okay. So, Sheriff's Department, Len Hageman, Deputy Lucas Smith, and an untold amount of deputies. The local Boone Police Department, I've contacted them and the higher ups. Oh, it's not our jurisdiction. We're not going to write a child abuse report. DHS Protective Services, Tom Hughes, who's a director of Watauga County DHHS, Chad Slagle, who was the guy I reported all this to. They refused to do anything or assess my kids. Valerie Johnson, she is the head of DHHS, knows that there is absolutely no procedure to protect kids for psychological abuse and says, oh, it's up to each county to do what they want to do. And I was like, that's fine. But what's the procedure for psychological child abuse? You can tell me the procedure for sexual, tell me the procedure for physical, but you can't tell me the assessment for psychological when there's one readily available by Dr. Craig Childress.
Hmm.
Okay. Then we're talking about, okay, Sarah Molesky. She is the legal communications paralegal who told me North Carolina gets $200 million a year. Out of that, the retirement accounts for the judges and all the stuff comes out of there. Attorney General office, their payment, all that stuff comes out of there. Also, Patrick Kinlaw, who's the director of the Judicial Retirement Fund of North Carolina, told me 88% of all that money goes into the judicial retirement accounts. So every single judge in North Carolina is on the payroll from this. The judiciary, Judge F. Warren Hughes, Judge Hal Harrison, also now Judge Rebecca Eggers. And there's over 1,100 judges in all the states accused of child abuse, yet we can't get one single report written. There is something really, really messed up here when we can't get a single report written for child abuse. Even if we're wrong, we should have the ability to write a report. Even if we're messed up, I'm sorry, I could be doing a million things. We should have the ability to write a report and get it investigated. And if I come up with, oh, maybe I'm the problem or I'm kind of crazy, oh, that's fine. But at least we did the assessment of the child and the assessment of me.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's no reason not to do this. And that is why, again, I wrote this. They have no right not to write a report. Zero. Okay, let's do this. Let's find out that this parent, who I thought was kind of crazy, is crazy. Let's do the assessment of them, assessment of their children, and let's prove that.
Hmm.
They're refusing to write these reports so they can say, oh, we've never had this before. Well, we've never had a report written. We're not going to write one now. Yes, you should write one now so you can see how many reports are actually being written. So
Hmm.
you can see which are the good judges, which are the bad judges. But to be right now, there's no good judges because the judges aren't coming out to say, we need to stop this court. We need to stop this criminal, corrupt court
Hmm.
who are abusing kids. Okay, so let's go to the attorneys. Judge Tony DeSante in Boone, North Carolina. He was representing Watauga County as their attorney. His law firm was also my attorney. I was the first one that I hired. And when I went to the Bar Association, they said, conflict of interest? We don't see a conflict of interest, even though they represented you. We don't see a conflict of interest. So, for being corrupt and criminal, you know, I'm not saying to anybody out there, you should go ahead and just go willy nilly against these people. That would be stupid. So
Hmm.
don't do that. But you have to throw this in the back of your mind. How do I protect my child?
Hmm.
That's what this is about. How do I protect my family, my children who I've raised?
Hmm.
Okay. Um, so then we have Andrea Capua, who was my attorney, actual attorney, along with Dasani Watson Capua. How do how do we stop her being on my side and then me firing her because she wasn't fighting enough, excuse me, and now representing the county for the same exact case, the same exact reasons that I've had 20 different calls from
Hmm.
Watauga County of these same judges abusing, ordering abuse of their kids and ordering domestic violence. How do you stop this? You know, then we got the mental health, and academia. Lyric Fitzgibbons.
Hmm.
Um, she was the counselor who saw my daughters. She was the counselor who abused my daughters
Those are the
psychologically.
demons.
Yes. And she was found guilty of 3 ethics violations and psychologically abusing my kids. I have it in writing. And if
Wow.
you give that to the deputies, give it to the police, give it to whatever, they will say, we're not going to write this. She's protected by judicial immunity. No, she's not. They're lying and lying to not write the reports.
Well,
Or Dr. Kurt Michaels. This is a beautiful thing. I love this. If your child is has been abused by this psychological child abuse, they are 12 times more likely to kill themselves
hmm.
when they realize, oh my God, I've done all this crappy stuff to my own father or mother,
Hmm.
and they can't handle it. And the cognitive dissonance, and they can't understand who's telling the truth and who's lying and what's going on. And they may be in a situation. I spoke to plenty of moms and dads who have called me up because their child killed themselves.
Mm.
It's one of the hardest discussions and talks I've ever had to do because my sympathy just goes over the top. How do you say it's going to be okay? No, you can't. I had one mom call me up that their child was going into college, 20 years old, had everything going for him, and couldn't reason properly
Mm.
and couldn't understand what was going through his mind, and he killed himself, or
Unalived
he
himself.
unalived himself. And how do you speak to a mom after that happens?
Mm.
You don't you it This happens so much that that's why I call these people child abusers and murderers,
Hmm.
because they have no problem. It won't most of the time it doesn't happen with the kid where the kid offs himself at that time. It happens later on when they can't reason properly or go to a mom or go to a dad. Hey, what do I do in this situation? And they have to handle this all alone, and they don't have the ability for critical thinking. They
Hmm.
don't have the support network of a mom or a dad. They don't have that. And so, I don't know how to express myself in this situation because it should not happen.
Hmm.
Sorry. So anyhow, Dr. Kurt Michaels, he was at Appalachian State University. Also, his director was Rosemary Webb. These people are child abusers.
Mhm.
They refuse to acknowledge psychological child abuse. They refuse to acknowledge the DSM-5 V995.51. They don't understand. They not only don't understand it or can't relate to it, but they refuse to call me back. They refuse to contact me about this. I don't mind having a discussion. Oh, Kenny, I'm wrong. That's fine. Stuff happens. I'm wrong all the time,
Mhm.
but at least have a discussion. What they want to do is not respond to you, not come back to you, not talk to you because they know that they are in the wrong with ethics and everything else. So what you have is you have uh, a college who's actually teaching psychology and teaching people how to kill children and how to kill parents.
Mhm.
That's what they're there for. They're teaching them that this abuse, we're not even going to cover it. Maybe, an hour or 2 hours. That's all you need to know about it. It doesn't exist, but it exists greatly, and they don't want to address it. Now, um, Dr. Kurt Michaels, he's the director over at the Jed Foundation. Do you know the Jed Foundation?
Mm-mm.
It was founded by a mom and a dad whose child killed themselves.
Mm.
And to have the Jed Foundation from a organization who tries to prevent child unaliving themselves
Mhm.
and having him who's encouraging children to unalive themselves by
Oh.
not addressing psychological child abuse and the damage that occurs 5 years, 10 years down the road is unheard of. And I spoke to two of their people from the Jed Foundation. They emailed me. Lee Campbell, the chief people and equity officer at the Jed Foundation, and there was another person. When they contacted me and said, "Oh, what's going on here? We want to have a meeting with you really quickly at 12 o'clock." This was in the morning, and I'm like, "I would love to speak to you, talk to you about what went on." Um, they refused to get back to me on this. They refused to speak to me on this, and they actively know that they have hired a person who is encouraging the unaliving of children to be their director in the Jet
Mm.
Foundation. And you know, what do you do? Again, her name is Leslie Campbell, the chief people and equity officer at the Jet Foundation. There was another gentleman who I spoke to. Mr. Reacher.
Mm.
Them are actively just refuse to even speak to me. I mean,
Mm.
I would be okay again if they said, "Ken, hey, you're wrong. This is not the way it's going." I'd be fine with that. But to just they all run off of the same page, and they run off of the same page that the police department does, the sheriff's department does, and everybody else in the DHHS does. We will not speak to you about this. What do you mean you won't speak to me about this? My child is being abused. Tens of thousands of other children are being abused as a direct result of this.
Mhm.
We don't want to speak to you. Yeah, it's like the same page. Oh, well, if I don't speak to you, it doesn't exist.
Mm.
That's why Josh Stein, the governor of North Carolina, refuses to respond because he knows anything he's going to say. Oh, I've been a child abuser and a murderer for the last 6 years since you spoke to me, and I refuse to do anything then. I refuse to do anything now. Okay,
Mm.
so and then this guy Alex Kurt. Alex Kurt was a student at Appalachian State. He was one that saw my daughters, and I said to him, I say, we need to bring Kurt in here. He saw my daughters at a Ask program at Watauga High School. And I said, listen, this is more than just child separation. This is something really vicious. I don't know what it is at this point. And so when I tried to contact Alex Kurt, he refused to actually respond, just like everybody else. This
Mm.
is their MO. Turns out that he was bribed by Dr. Kurt Michael. Hey, listen, don't respond to him. Let's do some projects together, some research together, and I'll give you great letters of recommendation for you to go to Boulder, Colorado, and go to school there.
Mhm.
Which is kind of funny because I moved out to Colorado, tried to contact him, and I got called by the police. Stop trying to contact this guy.
Hmm.
Okay, well, I'd like to file criminal charges of child abuse against him then. Oh, we're not going to do that. That happened in another state. You can't win for losing. You're
Mm-mm.
the victim. And I don't want to claim the victim. It's just that laws only apply against you. They don't apply for you or to protect your kids. And the politicians are Lamberkin. He's the U.S. attorney in the Western District. He was the U.S. attorney. He said, get me one other person, two other people. I got him three other people that were abused in family court. He refused to contact me and refused to do anything. I mean, they just shut you off when you actually make sense and do exactly what they say. Now, here's the other thing is any of the media outlets, the Mountain Times, the High Country Press, the Observer, Charlotte Observer, Winston Observer, doesn't matter who you call up, they're all in the pockets of the government.
Mhm.
And none of them want to write anything. None of them want to write any reports because they know they're going to lose their in with whoever it is reporting. That's just me. That's just me. And I'm not going to even tell you about the new North Carolina Judicial Standards Commission, which is the same across the board in all the states. They don't want to do anything against their own.
Right.
They will protect their own.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
And so, how do you protect your child? Report child abuse and assess your child.
Mhm.
That's all, and honestly assess your child, not have somebody from the DHHS say, "Oh yeah, they don't need to see you." I figured it out. Nothing. No, you need somebody who is not in the mix and not a corrupt person who will actually assess your child for this psychological child abuse.
Mhm.
And there could be 5 or 10 or 15% of parents who are only seeing their kids every other week or whatever who are making this up, and it's not actually happening. We have to understand that can be too. But for the majority of people that I've run into who are losing contact with their kids, losing contact for weeks, months, you can't, weeks, months, years, and in my case, decades. We need to stop this because I'm
Mhm.
really sick and tired of seeing another parent kill themselves or
Mhm.
speaking to another parent whose child has unalived
Alive.
themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Thank
That's
you for
that.
correcting me. Situation.
Yeah.
And, that's why I wrote all this stuff. Go to my website, childabusivejudges.com. Go to states and letters. You can write some letters and make it your own. And then you could find all of the codes for child abuse in your state and the statutes for child abuse in your state and for serious mental harm, mental injury stuff. So it's in there. They just don't want to write them for your child. They
Mhm.
just don't want to write them for any child or any parent because there's so much money coming in.
Mhm.
That's why I don't want to say child especially when you go to your own attorney. Hey, this is what I need to do. File it now and go after them with a lawsuit now that they are actively abusing my child now. And the longer we wait, the more damage that happens to my child. And
Mhm.
I am not going to wait to see how damaged my child is.
Mm. Yeah. Right. Right. Mm.
There you go.
There. Hey, thanks for coming on. And I'd like to have you back on again. And thank you for all this information. So, hey, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube, Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and there's more platforms I'm on. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. Thank you so much, Ken Gottfried, for all this information. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. I had a wonderful time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
And thank you for all you do.
Oh, well, thank you
You
as
bet.
well.